Today, Sylvie and I are in the Hertfordshire village of Watton-at-Stone, situated halfway between the towns of Hertford and Stevenage. The village gets its name from an unusual type of rock known as Hertfordshire pudding stone, which can be found in the area. Watton-at-Stone sits on the River Bean, which runs beside the village. One notable resident of the village was a man by the name of Sir Nigel Gresley, a steam locomotive engineer who designed many of Britain's steam engines in the early 20th century. And the most famous of these were the A4 class steam engines, such as the Mallard, and a similar engine that bears his name. Gresley lived here at Watton House until his death here in 1941. This little building is the original village lockup, but it now forms part of someone's garden shed. There used to be 3 pubs in the village, and sadly one, the Wagon and Horses, closed several years ago, leaving just 2, the George and the Dragon and the Bull. Sylvie and I are setting off from the southern end of the village, and we turn up into Church Lane and head up the hill. A short distance up the hill, we turn left into Perrywood Lane. A short distance up this lane and we turn left again to pick up a footpath that will take us out of the village. This path brings us out into open fields, and the second field we come into offers us a spectacular view of Woodhall Park, which is where we're heading. The path eventually brings us to a gamekeeper's cottage beside the Hertford Road, and it's directly opposite the entrance to Woodhall Park. Today's walk is likely to be quite a long one, and so a pit stop at a pub is going to be pretty vital. Woodhall Park was originally created in the 16th century by a man named Philip Botella, and it was later acquired in the 1700s by a man named Thomas Rumbold, who had made his fortune in the East India Company. He replaced the original Tudor mansion with the current Georgian manor that stands today. Today the manor house is a private school, but the entire estate is now owned by the Smith family. The park isn't open to the public, but public footpaths allow access through the estate. Yeah, we turn off the track and we go down this path here, Sylv. As we approach the eastern boundary of the park, I'm waiting to see Sylvie's reaction when she sees how we have to get out. Going up and over isn't one of her favourites. Right, Sylv.
Over you go.
The steps built into the wall were how ramblers originally had to get over it. Once over the wall, the path going to the left was the way I would have preferred to have gone, but major roadworks that have been taking place over the past few years have blocked the path to the village of Sacombe, which is where we wanted to go. So instead, we turn right and follow the wall.
Right, we go down there, Sylv, down the lane there. Yeah, a bit muddy, isn't it?
This route eventually brings us out further up the A602, where we can cross over and head into Sacom Park. Sacom Park was created in the early 1700s by a Sir Thomas Rolt, who was a former governor of the East India Company. But from here we can see the major roadworks which have prevented us from using the road to the village of Sacombe.
Yeah, no, we take the left trackway, Sylv.
This gravel trackway eventually brings us to St Catherine's Church, which is situated on the hilltop just outside the village of Sacombe. St Catherine's Church was used for location filming in the 2001 film Enigma, starring Kate Winslett. The movie was about the Bletchley Park code breakers. Sadly, the church wasn't open, as I was hoping to get a clip of Sylvie sat in the pew where Kate Winslett sat in the film. So Sylvie and I just had to carry on using the path near the church.
Yeah, we go through this way. Oh. Thank God we're at the top of the hill.
Once we were over the hill, the path took us through a large paddock and into Sacom Green. As we pass through Sacom Green, we follow the footpath sign and turn left through a gap in the hedge. And amazingly, this path takes us through the front garden of a large old house. As we walked through the grounds of this big old house, we were surprised that it borders a Christmas tree farm. We eventually emerge onto a little narrow road known as Rowney Lane. But we only stay on the lane for about 100 yards. As the lane turns off to the left, we carry on onto a footpath. This path eventually brings us to a place called Lowgate Farm, and we carry on past the farm and onto a wide gravel driveway. And we stop for a while to admire the view across the fields. The gravel driveway then brings us out onto a country lane known as Lowgate Lane, and we carry on down this lane until it brings us to a small hamlet known as Standon Green End. And it's here that I want to take Sylvie to see an interesting piece of British history.
Well, I've just been into the farm and got permission to go into the field. I want to show Sylvie an important piece of British history. Right, I'll be go through here, Sylv. Over the gate. Or through the gate, whatever. Over. You love these things, don't you? Good girl.
Oh.
You watch. I bet I'll make a balls of it. Towards that tree, Sylv.
If you were to ask any person when they thought the first manned flight took place in Britain, many would cast their minds back to the time of the Wright brothers, who first flew in 1903, and think it probably happened shortly after. But they might be surprised to learn that it actually took place almost 120 years earlier. On the 15th of September 1784, an Italian by the name of Vincenzo Lunardi stunned a crowd of over 150,000 people when he took off in a hot air balloon from the Honourable Artillery Grounds in North London. Accompanied by a dog, a cat and a pigeon, he rose slowly skyward, and the winds eventually took him away from the city northwards over the county of Hertfordshire. And 2¼ hours later, he landed right here on this spot near Standon Green End. And the event is now marked by this monument. And this was the very first manned flight to occur in Britain. And few people have ever heard of this event.
Hard to read. I'll have to I'll take a photograph and look at it on the screen when I get home. It's a bit hard to read. Wow, interesting. You know what you got to do?
Not fair. You filming me?
Well, I must say you're getting a lot better.
My legs aren't long enough.
Oh, I forgot to tell Sylvie that you can actually lift up the top rung. I'm in the doghouse now. You still love me, don't you, Syl?
We're now backtracking down the lane, 100 yards or so, until we reach a junction where it meets another lane which has a rather strange name. Pest House Lane apparently got its name from hundreds of years ago, when there existed a hospital somewhere along here that treated plague victims. Nothing exists of the building anymore though. The lane runs for about a mile, and halfway along it we can see our next destination, the village of High Cross. High Cross has a notable character in its history, and it was home to a man named Arthur Martin-Leake, and as a lieutenant in the Royal Army Medical Corps, he was the first person ever to be awarded the Victoria Cross twice. Firstly during the Boer War, and then secondly during the First World War, and he's now buried in the village churchyard. Stone pillars bearing the symbol of the VC stand by the roadsides at each end of the village. The only pub in the High Cross, the White Horse, closed a number of years ago and has stood empty ever since. So we have to carry on down the hill to the village of Wadesmill, where the pub there is one that we visit quite often. Wadesmill has its place in history, as it was here that Britain's first turnpike was established in 1663. Alas, as we arrived in the village, we were dismayed to find the pub had closed for refurbishment, and after walking 9 miles, and we were dying for a drink. The only other pub in the village, the Anchor, closed at the start of the pandemic and never reopened. Well, Sylvie and I had no choice but to carry on, so we turned into Anchor Lane, where we had to pick up a footpath for the long walk back to Watton-at-Stone. The footpath starts in someone's driveway, and it takes us up the nearby hill. After a couple of miles, it should bring us into the tiny village of Tonwell, or Tunnel as it's locally pronounced. About a mile along the path we come to a place called Chenning Farm. Only another mile to go to Tunnel. A few hundred yards from the village we come to Bengio Temple Farm, where we pick up a trackway leading to Tunwell. Pretty soon we could see Tunnel's iconic landmark, which is a strangely shaped water tower. And as we approached the village, we stopped to chat to a local man walking his dog, and we were stunned when he told us that the water tower is being converted into a house. We passed through the village and crossed over the busy A602, and it's here we picked up a footpath that would lead us to the village of Stapleford, which isn't far from Watton. Darkness was now setting in. Unfortunately, we had a torch with us so we could follow the paths.
Well, it's getting well and truly dark. We've been walking for nearly, what, seven and a half hours, and still got a little way to go. Come on, Sylv, you go first. It's dark down there.
We eventually came into the village of Stapleford, and here we followed the Hertford Road for the last stretch of the walk to Watton-at-Stone. We finally made it back to Watton-at-Stone after walking for 8 hours, and we'd covered almost 14.5 miles and desperately needed a rest and a drink. Thankfully, the Bull pub was open and it was very busy, and we certainly enjoyed the beer.
You need this, don't you? Cheers.
Well, that certainly was a walk. Anyway, we enjoyed it and we hope you did, and we'll see you next time.